All right, so as we go into the second session, I hope the last session wasn't too scary. And I think you know that we always need to parent out of vision and not fear. Our decisions shouldn't be based in fear. They should be based in what do I want for my children? What is the life that I want for them? And how can we get there? And so I always like my baseline with my children is that they're confident and capable, and that they are amazing, and that we're going to work together to do things well. And I think things can go wrong. Our kids are facing a lot of complexities in the online space. There's lots of stuff they can be exposed to, but we have been chosen for them, and they were chosen to live at this time. And God wasn't taken by surprise when Steve Jobs went, I've invented this thing. It's called the iPhone. You know, God didn't go, oh my goodness, what now? We have what it takes to live an abundant life now, and our children have that too. So this tonight is just about us helping our children to do that. And so I just want to share some very practical ways that we as parents can over. Okay, sorry. All right, is that better? Okay. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to get inside the room. If you're standing outside the room, i.e. your child has a device, has a PlayStation, has an Xbox, has a phone, and you have no clue what's going on in that, you need to find out. You need to open that door and you need to find out. So what that looks like is you need to become present in that space. And the first thing that I really encourage all of us to do, and I actually encourage us to do this on all of our devices, my husband and I do it as well, is that you put monitoring and filtering software on your devices. I'm not a big fan of tracking my kids. I don't do that. I feel like, and again, you might track your kids, that's fine. I don't think tracking is effective because your children generally will be with an adult that you trust, whether they're at school or at someone's house. They're generally not walking on the freeway. And so anyway, I'm not talking about really the tracking side. I'm talking about some kind of software that provides a level of protection for you or for your child. And what that equates to is when you get in a car and your child gets in the seat next to you, you say to them, please put on your seatbelt before we drive. Filtering and monitoring software on a device is like a seatbelt to someone who's in a car. Or it's like shark nets at a beach that you're swimming in. The purpose of it is to try and keep the baddies and the junk out so that your child can have a positive, safe online experience. It is not a one and done scenario that they've got software on their device, they're fine. But it is a good first step. And there's lots of them. A lot of people use Google Family Link. I use one called Safe Surfer. The reason I use it is because it's effective and it's cost effective. It cost me 50 Rand a month, less than 2 cappuccinos, and it's on all of my children's devices. And how these things work, there's a whole talk on on my website if you want to go look at it. But how most of these apps work is you sign up on their websites, then you download the app onto all of your devices, and from a dashboard on your website, you customize what you do on those devices. So for example, in our household, our children got phones when they went to high school because they needed them for communication, and we felt like it was an appropriate age, and then they only had WhatsApp on it. They couldn't download anything else. So on the dashboard for Emily's phone, it would have WhatsApp. And then there's all these things that you can switch on, like limit adult websites, no pornography, no cigarette advertising, no alcohol, no Twitch, no Discord, no Twitter, no this. It was like WhatsApp. And then on her search, she would have safe search for her Google, so she wouldn't be able to get onto inappropriate websites. Because a lot of the time when our children get involved in the wrong side of the internet, it's by accident. Not many kids actually go and look like, let me go and look for this. It's usually because you're curious. And so it's kind of just that first layer of protection. And then as my children grew, so in our home, it was phone in grade 8, some really old iPhone that she'd inherited from someone in the family. And because you know what, when you give your child a brand new phone as their first phone, it's like giving them a Ferrari as their first car. Okay, that's not a good idea. And also, remember, don't give your child a phone for their birthday or Christmas, because you're literally giving them something that belongs to you. Doesn't belong to them. And also, it's much easier to give a device to a child and say, this is a device for your use, as long as you are an upright model citizen and are showing yourself to be responsible enough to use this device. It's not if you're already given one as a Christmas gift, there's no judgment here. It's fine. Killing two birds with one stone is fine in the financial aspect, especially. But anyway, so then so halfway through grade 8, my kids got Instagram. So then on Safe Surfer, then you allow access to Instagram. And so she was allowed access to Instagram, and then halfway through grade 9, Snapchat. And the boys, when they got their phones, you customize. So it's one of those things that as your children grow, you take off the restraints, and then they have more autonomy, they have more freedom, those kinds of things. So that's really helpful. I actually met a mom a little while ago who was alerted to nudity on her children's device, and when she went on to see what it was, her 10-year-old and 14-year-old had been on Roblox. And if you were here this morning, we would have spoken about this, but someone had catfished her children. So he'd literally pretended to be a child, made friends with her children through the chat, because almost every single game has a chat element to it, and then had said to them, I have all these Robux that I don't want, which is the virtual currency of Roblox. Do you want them? And kids were like, yeah. I mean, who would say no? Of course we want them. And then he's like, just send me a pic of you so that I can just see who I'm giving them to. And so they sent a pic. And then he's like, do you want some more? I've got more. And then he's like, but can you just take a pic without your clothes on this time? And they did. Anyway, so the parental app was like, there is nudity happening on your phone, on your kid's device, and was alerted to it and could. But I'm telling the short version of the story. As I said to you last night, sexual groomers are very clever. Do you know that I was doing some research around boys recently. 2 out of every 5 boys in South Africa will be sexually abused by the time they're 18. We often think of sexual abuse as a girl thing. And most of those boys will be abused by someone they know. And a lot of the grooming of those boys to get them into that space where they say yes to sexual abuse, where they don't resist anymore, will happen on their phones. It happens with sports coaches. I can tell you many, many stories. Sports coaches, youth pastors, strangers on the internet. This kind of level of protection will alert you. Something like bark also will alert you to certain words that are inappropriate, certain words associated with suicide or self-harm or inappropriate relationships. So these are just a really good first level of protection, especially when our children are younger. And as I said, I have these on my phone as well. It's just you also, if you have an iPhone, you will have something called screen time. And if you have an Android, you have something called digital well-being. There's really good things you can set up in there to keep your children safe as well. If you have an Xbox, if you have a PlayStation, it exists in there. My friend, she was telling me that she had set up her son's Xbox with no profanity, was one of the settings that she'd set. And so her son called someone a word that he doesn't usually use, but he was really irritated with this player in the game, used the word, Xbox shut him out. And so then she just heard him like throw his console, and he's like quite a chilled kid. She's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? He had a 3-day ban from Xbox because he was swearing. So first thing, monitoring, filtering software. Second thing, presence and proximity. So be around. If your children are online, be around. Know what they like to do online. I'm not saying you have to stare over their shoulder at every TikTok video, or every Instagram video, or every game of Fortnite. My boys just got a PlayStation. Now they're 14. saved up some money and they've got themselves a PlayStation. And I can sometimes get very sucked into Fortnite because they're now playing Fortnite, and I can understand why it's it's the most addictive game on the market. Like Fortnite is the perfect storm of addiction. And so understand their games. They won't let me play. I don't know why, but I sit there and watch with them and tell them there's something hidden under there, and go over there. And they're like, Mom, please be quiet. Use your shield. Play their games with them. Watch some of their YouTube. I mean, my boys go through stages of watching certain YouTubers, and they used to watch this one called How Ridiculous. Has anyone ever watched that? And that I got sucked into as well. Like grown men doing the most ridiculous things. Like taking a helicopter, taking the blades off and replacing them with baseball bats, and then just throwing stuff at it to see what goes the furthest. It was fascinating. But watch their stuff with them. Show interest in what they're doing. If they like Minecraft, ask them to show you what they're building, what they're doing. Just show your interest. Another proximity and presence is open phone policy. This needs to be a complete, non-negotiable in our homes. Everyone on the planet should have one person who can pick up their phone at any time and look at it. I often think of when people get twitchy when you pick up their phone. It's like, in the Lord of the Rings, my precious. But when no one is ever going to look at this, I can do what I want on this. There's no accountability at all. And so I believe that husbands and wives should be able to look at each other's phones. You should know each other's passwords. If you are a single person, you should have a friend who will give you a good kick if you're doing stupid stuff, who can look at your phone whenever they want. And I'm not saying they're going to scroll through your stuff. It's just that level of accountability. And then with parents, with children, parents are the level of accountability that their parents. And I'm not saying go and scroll through every message. I'm not saying that you need to click on every link. I'm just saying that you being able to access your child's phone is like a speed bump for a car with bad brakes. It's going to slow things down. If it's like, oh, my mom might be on my phone. There's certain things that, it just provides a level of protection for our children. And then a no deleting policy. And I've had this with my children since they got devices. I think I said this to you, but this is really helpful because it provides really great coaching moments. Sometimes a message will come through at 2 a.m. onto my daughter's phone on a school night from someone, and that's a good conversation to have. Or a couple of days ago, where I generally check my kids' phones is I look at their For You page on Instagram to see what kind of things they're interested in looking at. I look at their direct messages. I never open unread messages because unless there's a red flag, unless there's something that looks dodgy, I just have a little browse, maybe have a look at pictures, whatever. And I know my kids can delete stuff, and I know there's apps that I can put on there to see their deleted stuff. I don't want to have to do that. But the other day, I was just on my son's Instagram, my phone was just charging in the kitchen, and a notification came up from a friend that he got a direct message from a friend on Instagram saying, have you seen the new Sidemen video? Does anyone know who that is? Sidemen. They're YouTubers. Okay, does anyone remember Prime? Remember Prime, that 5 minutes of absolute lunacy where we were spending all that money on a ridiculous, revolting drink? Anyway, those. So one of the Sidemen owns Prime. He's made all that billions off us. Anyway, so he said, have you seen the new Sidemen video? And Sidemen are these very influential YouTubers who have millions of subscribers, and their target audience is 12 to 14-year-old boys. That's where their main audience is. And this particular new video was one guy, 20 girls in a room. So this was a red flag for me. I was like, let me look at what this video is. So I clicked on it, and it was most of the Sidemen guys sitting there watching what was going on, and one guy, and girl by girl would come into the room and he'd interact with them. So they're kind of like seeing what his riz is like, how he interacts with the girls, has he got moves, that kind of thing. And it's all in the light of joking, but the way he treated these girls was complete and utter objectification. It was awful. And every interaction he had, I kept thinking, I hope my sons never act like this. But this is the influence that's coming over my sons, because these are the videos that are being targeted at them. The worst one was, he said to this girl, when we greet each other, we bow. And so she bows, and he's like, no, you have to turn around with your back facing to me, and then you need to bow. And then he's like looking at her butt. And I was like, these are the kinds of videos that our kids are watching. So then what I said to the boys, oh, did you see the link that Josh sent you with that Sidemen video? Have you watched it yet? And my son was like, no, I haven't watched it yet. And then I said, well, have a look at it and let's talk about it. Because there wasn't anything graphic. And so then I sat and I watched it with him and we spoke about it. Because when you are present, you can have these kinds of conversations about the content that they're watching. And one thing I want to recommend is don't freak out. So in me, I was like, can't believe this disgusting filth that my sons are consuming. But I was like, let's have a conversation about this video. So be on their social media, keep an eye on who they're following, who's following them, what kinds of things they're interested in, and then research and understand any app that your child wants to use. So children should not download apps without parental permission, and that's really easy to set up, where they have to send you something, you put in your password, and then they're allowed. And Common Sense Media, if you are not familiar with them, is a website where you can literally type in the name of any app, and they will give you what kids say, what parents say, what experts say, and they'll give you an age guide, which is really helpful. So often when I get a request from my kids, I hop onto there, it takes me like 5 minutes, and I make a decision about whether I need to look at it more or whether it's okay for them to have. So try them, understand them. And then presence is also when your child gets an app, set it up with them. TikTok has safety features. So does Snapchat. So does Roblox. Every single game and app your children, there is a way that you can make it safer for them. So familiarize yourself, go onto TikTok.com, Instagram.com, and just see how you can make these spaces safer for your kids. And then the second thing, and this is the third thing, and this is one of the most important thing, is we want our children to talk to us. That's why when I see the Sidemen video, I don't explode. I have a conversation because I want my kids to be able to have conversations. So in that conversation about that video, my boys were like, oh, but Mom, they're just joking. They're just having a laugh. And so then we can have a conversation about that. And is it appropriate to laugh about girls and those kinds of things? But I don't want to shoot them down. I want them to be starting to think critically, start to develop their character. And that comes not through me lecturing them. I'm sure you know this as parents, but the moment you start to lecture your kids, their brains shut. They literally are waiting for you to stop talking so they can leave. It's how brains work. And so it's not going to help. Ranting on about the evils of social media, not that helpful. I had this one boy say to me, my mom blames everything on the Wi-Fi. And so every time he gets a bad school report, she's like, it's that Wi-Fi. He says, the other day I dropped a plate in the kitchen. And I heard her. She goes, my boy, it's that Wi-Fi. And I said, yeah, but were you on your phone and carrying your plates at the same time? Because then it was the Wi-Fi. But anyway, so just ask questions, be curious. I ask lots of questions about the online space and FIFA and the fantasy game leagues, and then ask them really deep questions. You know, does your social media control you, or do you control it? Why are you posting that? What do you think about that? Talking about the big issues like sexuality, like gender, like pornography, all of those big things. Talk about them. Talk about what pornography does. We really, with our teenagers, we really do need to be talking to them about pornography. And actually, any child who has access to the internet needs to be aware that pornography exists. If you have a 5-year-old that has access to the internet, having a conversation where you say something like, do you know that sometimes people actually put naked pictures on the internet? Isn't that so weird? Like, why would you put a naked picture on the internet? Remember, our naked bodies are private, they're precious, and they don't belong on the internet. Because when we have conversations with our children, we prepare them for what they might come across. When my son, a couple months ago, was shown a nude of a 13-year-old girl by a boy in his hockey team, he knew what to do. He got up, he walked away. When he got in the car, he told his sister, and then he told me. And when we spoke about it afterwards, he said to me, Mom, when I saw that picture, I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised. So he was shocked because of what it was, and he was a teenage boy, so it really, like, his dopamine levels and whatever would have shot into the pleasure center of his brain. And that is normal. So our children, and especially our teenage boys, need to know that their bodies responding to a sexual image is completely normal. It's not a sin. It's normal. What they do after that is the game changer. What they do with that feeling in that moment is the game changer. It's the getting up and walking away. It's the choosing not to objectify a person. And so when we educate our children with good, healthy information about sex, about respect, then when they come across the ugly side, they're shocked, but they're not surprised. They're not a deer in the headlights, a slave to their dopamine levels and their lack of a prefrontal cortex and making really bad decisions. So talk to them about that. Talk to them about what to do if they're exposed to any inappropriate content. I always just say to my kids, shut it down, walk away, tell me as soon as possible. Because when our children are exposed to inappropriate content, shame is going to set in quickly. There's going to be that voice in their head that says, you can't tell mom this. You're going to get in so much trouble. She's going to take your phone. What kind of person looks at stuff like that? You should be ashamed of yourself. You're disgusting. If anyone knew, they won't want to be around you. Shame is the biggest disconnector. That's why it broke everything in the garden. Adam and Eve went and hid. They were full of shame. And when our children do things, see things that are inappropriate, that they know is wrong, it's very quick for shame to set in and they hide. So that's why I always say, let there be a short gap between what happens and when you tell me. And I promise I will be there to help you. So how we respond when our children come because they've searched out porn, or they've been watching it for 6 months, or they're the ones who have been mean on a group, or something's happened. How we respond is gonna determine what they do next time. So we need to be having these conversations with them. We need to be having conversations about digital footprints, about criminal culpability. We need to be having conversations about future self. The way I always put it with my children is you have a future self. You have a future self that is perhaps a mom, a dad, a business person, a psychologist, a professional surfer, something. But what you do now is going to affect her. There's no magic wand when you turn 21 that turns you into. You are an unceasing spiritual being who is being formed all the time. So who are you being formed into by what you are doing? Is it helping or is it harming your future self? So envision your children for their future, their sexual future, their marriage, the kind of relationships they want to have, all of those things. Remember, the Bible says, without vision, we cast off restraint. And so vision is a very motivating thing for young people. I also talk about the fact that my children can blame me for their good behavior. My mom checks my phone. Please don't send me stuff like that. Or, I can't go to that movie. My mom's so unreasonable. I'm okay with that. You can blame me if you want me to, if you want to. I don't mind being a bad guy. Often it's the children who can't talk to their parents because there's so much performance and perfection pressure on them. They go to the internet for affirmation. So make sure that our homes are places of unconditional love that do not depend on what marks they get at school, anything like that. They are completely loved and they know that. So we're having these conversations all the time, talking about self-worth. I love, one of the things I love about my kids having Instagram now is the reels they send me. It gives me such insight into their lives, into their humor, into how they see the world. There's amazing young comedians doing skits on school and parenting, and it really does make for really good conversations. Even little kids, we can talk to them about what they're seeing. I often ask my kids, what did you watch? And we talk about videos. And then, as I said, when we speak to especially our teenagers about the digital space, speak to them with respect. Speak to them like you believe in them, like they're capable, like you affirm their character, encourage their critical thinking, but be the adult. Draw them up into more. And then obviously giving them good guidelines is really important, and then talk to them about what to do when things go wrong. Remind them of that. And then the fourth thing I just want to touch on is that boundaries and expected behaviors should be clear. This is one of the things that cuts out the fighting, the nagging, and the kind of messiness of social media, is if our children know up front what the expected behaviors are and what the boundaries are. Boundaries are our best friend. I think there's probably tons of books out there on boundaries because they work and they are important. And when our children have clear and firm boundaries about their social media, they feel safe. So we need to talk about boundaries of where they use their devices. Now, that's going to be up to you, but with younger kids, I do recommend no devices in bedrooms. As they get into their teen years, those things might change. Sometimes, this again is home by home, but schools, sometimes they need their devices. But definitely digital sunsets, 30 minutes before bed, all devices go into the kitchen where they get charged. Never have devices in children's and teenagers' bedroom overnight. Often teenagers and parents go, yeah, but it's their alarm clock. It's like, well, isn't that your job? I go old school. I'm like, it's time to wake up. They don't need their iPhone to tell them that. That's my job. So they don't need that. Otherwise, if you don't want to wake them up, if you go to school, if you go to work early, or you go for a run, or your children do need to wake up, buy them an old school alarm clock, or buy them a watch that wakes them up. No devices in bedrooms. It's a really great boundary to have. And then boundaries like how much time. A great boundary is all homework, all chores, time with family happens before screen time. Screen time is a treat once you've done all the other things. It's that, I often say to kids, like, well, what if your mom came home from work and she lay on the couch and watched a Netflix series and then only made dinner at 10 o'clock if she felt like it? That's not how life works. Life works like you do your stuff and then you get to chill. And so have those boundaries. Pack their stuff for school, do their homework, do their chores, do all those things. And in our house, if there's time, and if there's enough time before we go to bed, there's some screen time. But I'm sure most of our lives with young kids are really busy, and then at the weekend a little bit more time, and obviously in the holidays. Also limits like all accounts must be private. Parents know all passwords. You keep track of where the device is. The other great thing about having a charging station in the kitchen that I love is I can look across and I can see that all the devices are there. So I know no one's on their devices. And it's so much easier for them to keep track of them. And then have sacred times and places where you never allow devices. I think the great ones are the dinner table. The science around one meal a day around the table with your family is incredible. Kids who have one meal a day with their families do better in school. They're much less likely to do drugs, have teenage sex, and get involved in all sorts of the dark side of the internet. But it all becomes down to healthy connection, healthy attachment, and belonging. That's what it comes down to. That meal does not have to have 3 vegetables and a meat and a dessert, okay? You can get KFC, you can have toast. What's important is this connection time where your children feel that sense of being rooted in a family. And remember, a family can be a granny and one child. Families look different. And so we connect our children deeply. So the dinner table, the car is an amazing place for conversations with your teenagers because no one has to look at each other. I promise you, I do this. If I would have to have an awkward like my daughter's very open. I can talk to her about anything, but my boy's not so much, especially the one. He's a bit of a vault. But if I want to talk about something, I wait till we're 5 minutes from home and we're driving in the car. Because they know that this conversation will be over in 5 minutes' time. And I know that they're captive, unless they jump out the car on the freeway because it's such a bad conversation. But generally, we have these little, quick, powerful conversations, and it works. So if you don't have phones, it's also a lovely place to just chat. So no phones in the cars. Please don't drive to school with your kids with earphones on and all of that. Just have that time to talk. Be aware of addictive behavior. That's really, really important. And encourage your children in terms of boundaries that what they say, how they interact, they need to be a model citizen on the internet. They need to make it a kinder place, a safer place, a better place for the people that they're interacting with. A quote that I love is, dance like no one's watching, but text like the whole world will read it. So make sure that they don't have personal conversations with people. They don't have even angry conversations, even like fights with friends, all of those things should be done face-to-face. They shouldn't be able to be screenshots and all of that. And then just in terms of boundaries, it's really important that we as parents lead by example. So what are our digital boundaries? Are we the ones sending that important work email when we're sitting eating with our children? Are we the ones who, when our children ask us for something, they look at the top of our head because we're busy texting? Are we ranting or sharing stories about Israel that we have not even attempted to find out if they're true? And if it says forwarded many times at the top, please don't send it to anyone. Please. Definitely don't put it on any groups. Go and Google whether that thing is actually factually correct, and if it is, send it to that friend who you think is interested in it. This is really important. This is good digital behavior that we need to model for our children, because often we're the ones. And then when things go wrong, do we respond correctly? I had porn shared with me on a swim group once because I do open water swimming, and I told my kids what happened, and I told them what I did. I left the group. I said, I'm not exposing myself or my family to this. It was an accident. The guy went, oops, wrong group after that. Like, you have a group. Okay, this is part of the problem. If we want to raise a porn-free generation, we cannot have groups for this. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Porn is bad for everybody. Everybody. It's not good for anybody. And if we are allowing porn into our homes, a lot of boys who I know who are curious about porn is because they've seen something on their dad's phone. And so if you're watching porn, it's like you're bringing heroin into your house and hoping your son doesn't become a drug addict, because porn is as addictive as heroin and as damaging to our children as heroin. So we have to lead by example. We have to be respectful. Our digital health has to be good so that we can pass digital health onto our children. And then the other thing, just in terms of boundaries, is I encourage you, put on the brakes. Primary school age children do not need phones. They don't. The tiny little bit of social credit it's going to give them having TikTok is not worth the mountain of toxic worldviews they will absorb in that time when their brains don't know what to do with it. They don't need it. I have very well-adjusted kids with lots of friends who are fine. They didn't have social media or phones in primary school. And then when you do give it to them, gradual exposure, one app at a time. Monitor it, train them, teach them, help them. If they're doing okay in that one, maybe another app. Slowly, slowly, slowly. And then lots of scaffolding that's slowly taken away as your child grows and matures. And then the next thing is connection and values. I've already spoken a little bit about this, but stay deeply connected to your kids. Yes, teenagers are supposed to grow away from us. Yes, they're supposed to go into their bedrooms and close the door. Yes, they're supposed to want to be with their friends more than they want to be with us. But our children and our teenagers need deep connection to navigate the stage of life that they're in. So fight for that. Whether it's at bedtime, I had this epiphany not so long ago that there is a finite number of goodnight kisses. Okay, let it break your heart like it broke mine. Okay, there's a time that I'm going to kiss my children goodnight for the last time. Okay, because I'm not that creeper who's going to go to their house. There was a weird book. Did anyone read that book? And that mom put that ladder outside her son's house and climbed in and gave him a good night. It was like, okay, that's just freaky. But when your children want to talk, when they want to connect, at bedtime is our defenses come down, our thoughts become easier because there's so much less going on in our brains. Spend that time with your children to build connection with them. Listen to them. A lot of, especially teenagers, they will be pretty much one-word answers all day, and then at 10:30 or 11, they suddenly want the deep and meaningfuls. It's okay. Do it. It's worth it. If we can stay up for the Springboks, we can stay up for our teenagers. And then just in terms of that is help them learn from their mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to send inappropriate messages. They're going to rant. They're going to do things. But help them navigate that, facing the consequences. Don't clean up their mess for them. That's one of the worst things we can do, is blame other people, take the blame ourselves, and not let them clean up their mess. They must clean up their mess, but be alongside them, passing them the mop, saying, I'm here for you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to be with you. I love you. Nothing is going to change the way I love you. I'm going to navigate this with you. And then just be aware of the drifts. Because sometimes we go home from talks like this and we're like, okay, I'm on this. We have a game plan. We're putting the stuff in place. This is what's going to happen. And then it's going to be December holidays. And then you're going to lose the plot. And that's okay. But then regroup and go, okay, guys, we've lost the plots a little bit. Let's rein it in. What do we need to talk about? Have regular, what I like to call social media audits, where we go, okay, well, how much time are we spending? What are we watching? Like, let's figure this out and rein it in again. And then, as I said, just evolve with your children as they grow. Be there with them. Remind them that you love them. You are there for the long haul. And then as they grow, just encourage them. And then I just want to close with one quick story. And my daughter moved to a new school at the beginning of grade 10. She moved from a big public all-girls school to a smaller co-ed private school because she's a dancer and she wanted to do dance for matric. And it's a very hard year to move, grade 10. So where social media was incredibly helpful was she had one friend in the school, and through that friend, she online met other friends, and she kind of followed them on Instagram and connected with them on Snapchat, and they were really kind. And then before school, they had a lunch together. She met these girls that she'd kind of had met online, started school, had a great first term, just finding her feet, loved it. And then the holidays came, and she has a lot of friends in different spheres, so she spent the holidays with her surfing friends, didn't really see these girls, and then my nieces were out. They live overseas, and I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they were there at our house with us, and the night before school went back, there were lots of chats on her friend group, Instagram group, and she asked a question and no one answered. And so suddenly she internalizes, no one likes me, I don't belong, these girls are mean, da-da-da-da. And we're sitting around the table, and Emily's not there, and I go and I find her, and she's in her bedroom, and she's crying. And she's like, I know, like, and she's downloading all of this to me about how she feels, and then I have like one of my not so good parenting moments, maybe it was, I was like, wipe your tears. Your cousins are outside, they're going home tomorrow, go and be with them. We will deal with this later. So then she comes out, and we all still, her brothers are there, my sister's there, the nieces are there. We're all just chatting, and then one of my big niece who's 20 says, Lily, what's wrong? Because they call Emily Lily. Lily, what's wrong? And so she starts to tell them. And then her cousin starts to tell her experience of how she's only now found her people in London. She said, school was hard for me. I didn't really belong. I didn't really fit in, but now I've found my people. Now I know. And then my other niece started to say, yeah, teenage girls can be so mean, but don't worry, it's not you, it's them. And she started to kind of, and I could see Emily like just, and then the little brother, well, her little brother, he's 14, he's not little. He's like, yeah, that one time when, remember Blake when because they've switched to basketball now in grade 8, some of their friends are doing cricket. Yeah, remember they went on cricket tour and they came back and all they spoke about was cricket tour, and we felt so left out because we didn't have anything to say. And so they started weighing in on the conversation, and all Emily's people were speaking life over her. And so, yes, our teenagers have the digital world. It's part of their world. They're going to have pain there. They're going to have success there. They're going to have a whole bunch of stuff there. But let them be deeply rooted in the people who love them. So then she went to school the next day. Someone was like, oh, I forgot you asked that question. It was just a small thing. But she was held by the people who love her. And she's navigating her life. And all of my teenagers are by the people who are in this room, who love those teenagers and want the best for them. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for investing, for listening, and I hope it was a little bit helpful for you guys.